The enemy thought it was over, that no one was left to fight back. The dying light, the twin suns of Kepler 442b, cast long shadows across the abandoned mining equipment as Dr. Elena Vasquez ran through the colony's main street. Her breath came in sharp gasps, not from exertion, but from the thin atmosphere that never quite felt right in human lungs. Behind her, the communication tower stretched toward the amber sky like a metallic finger pointing at salvation that might never come. Elena, get to the shelter now. Captain Rex Morrison's voice crackled through her comm unit, distorted by electromagnetic interference that had been growing stronger by the hour. The grizzled former military officer had been trying to coordinate the colony's evacuation for 3 days. Ever since the first reports came in from the Outer Rim stations, she pressed her back against the tower's base, pulling out her scanner to check the signal strength one more time. The numbers were better than she had hoped. From this position with the tower's full power, she might be able to punch a message through the interference field that surrounded their world like a shroud. The question was whether anyone would be listening. 6 months ago, Kepler 44 to be had been home to 12,000 colonists, mostly miners, and their families, extracting rare earth elements from the planet's crust. The work was hard, but honest, and the pay was good enough to make the isolation bearable. Elena had come here as part of the geological survey team, but her background in xenobiology had made her the colony's unofficial expert on the strange signals they sometimes picked up from deep space. Now the colony was down to fewer than 800 souls, and those numbers were dropping fast. The Krillian swarm had appeared without warning, 3 systems away, consuming everything in their path. At the first reports, it seemed impossible. Entire planets stripped bare in a matter of days. Space stations reduced to scrap metal. Billions of lives simply erased from existence. But as the reports kept coming, as refugee ships arrived with tales of mechanical nightmares that blotted out the stars, the truth became undeniable. The galaxy had a new predator, and it was hungry. Elena's thoughts were interrupted by a soft whimper from behind a stack of supply crates. She peered around the corner and found herself looking at something that shouldn't exist. The creature was roughly humanoid, but made of what appeared to be living crystal, its translucent body pulsing with soft blue light. It was barely 3 feet tall, obviously young, and clearly terrified. "Hey there," Elena whispered, slowly extending her hand. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The creature looked up with eyes like liquid starlight and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. The universal translator in Elena's comm unit struggled for a moment before providing a rough translation. "Are you the ones called humans?" the creature asked. "My mother said humans were kind to lost children." Elena's heart clenched. This had to be an Ethian, one of the peaceful crystal beings whose homeworld had been the swarm's first victim. Intelligence reports said no Ethians had survived, but here was living proof that the reports were wrong. "Yes, I'm human." "Your name?" "I am called Zerine, in your language." "Ah." "I was on a learning ship when the dark machines came. Our ship tried to run, but they caught us. I hid in the life pod until it landed here. How long have you been hiding?" "Many cycles." "I saw your people preparing the flying ships. Are you running from the dark machines too?" Before Elena could answer, the ground began to vibrate. It started as a low rumble that she felt in her bones, then grew into a shaking that knocked loose equipment from shelves and sent dust cascading from the communications tower. In the distance, the colony's alarm sirens began to wail. Elena Rex's voice exploded from her comm unit. "They're here." Massive signatures dropping out of hyperspace. "You've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach orbit." She looked down at Zerine, who had pressed herself against the supply crates, her crystal body now pulsing with red light instead of blue. "Dark machines," the young Aetherian whispered. "They found us." Elena made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running for the evacuation ships, she gathered Zerine in her arms and sprinted toward the communications towers. "Entrance. What are you doing?" Rex demanded through the comm. "Someone has to send the signal," Elena replied, her fingers flying over the access panel. "The galaxy has to know what's coming. The evacuation ships can transmit once they're clear." "Of the interference field?" "No, they can't. The swarm jams all communications within 50 light-years of their position. This tower is our only chance to punch through before they establish full orbital control. She carried 09 up the tower's emergency ladder, the young Itherin's light providing additional illumination in the dim stairwell. As they climbed, Elena's mind raced through the transmission protocols she would need. Standard emergency frequencies wouldn't work. The swarm would be jamming those. She would need to use the deep space archaeology channels, the ones reserved for studying ancient civilizations. Most military commanders ignored those frequencies, but Elena knew at least a few xenorchaeologists who monitored them constantly. They reached the transmission chamber just as the first Krillian ships broke atmosphere. Elena set 09 down gently and rushed to the control console, her hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the growing terror in her chest. Through the tower's transparent aluminum windows, she could see them now. The Krillian ships looked like mechanical spiders crossed with praying mantises, their hull covered in sensor arrays and weapon emplacements. They moved with an eerie synchronization that spoke of a hive mind directing their actions, the largest. Vessels were the size of small cities, while swarms of smaller craft darted between them like metallic insects. Elena, you need to get out of there now. Rex's voice was tight with desperation. The last transport lifts off in 3 minutes. Negative, Captain. I'm staying to complete the transmission. That's an order, Doctor. Then I'm resigning my commission. Elena's fingers flew over the controls, routing power from the colony's main reactor directly into the communications array. The risk of overload was enormous, but it was their only chance to reach anyone who might be able. To help, 09 approached the console, her small hands glowing brighter. May I help? My people were very good with energy patterns. Elena nodded, not fully understanding but sensing that the young Etherin knew something she didn't. 09 placed her crystalline palms against the transmission controls, and suddenly, the power readings stabilized. The chaotic energy fluctuations smoothed into a perfect sine wave pattern. How did you do that? Etherins live in harmony with energy. We can feel the flow and guide it where it needs to go. Your machine was fighting itself. I made it sing together. Outside, the Krillian forces had begun their descent. The smaller ships were landing throughout the colony, disgorging mechanical warriors that moved with inhuman precision. Elena watched in horror as the machines began systematically dismantling buildings. Their cutting tools reducing decades of human construction to raw materials in minutes. Beginning transmission, Elena announced, knowing that Rex and the others were probably too busy escaping to respond. She hoped they made it. She hoped someone made it. The message she crafted was simple but comprehensive. Location coordinates, tactical data about the Krillian forces, and a desperate plea for help that she knew might never be answered. Earth was over 200 light-years away, and even if her message reached them, any response would take years to arrive, but she had to try. As the transmission began, Zeranine's light grew brighter, her crystalline body resonating with the communications array's frequency. The power output increased beyond anything Elena had thought possible. Instead of a localized broadcast, they were somehow creating a signal that would propagate across hundreds of star systems. What's happening? Elena asked. I am making your voice very loud, Zeranine replied, her childlike voice strained with effort so it can reach the far singers. Far singers. The ones who listen in the deep dark. My mother told me about them. They watch and wait for voices that need help. The Krillian machines had reached the base of the communications tower. Elena could hear the sound of cutting tools beginning to work on the tower's supports. They had minutes at most. The transmission indicator showed 40% complete. If they could just hold out a little longer, ... The tower shuddered as the machines began their ascent. Elena grabbed an emergency blaster from the wall rack, knowing it would be useless against the Krillian warriors, but unwilling to go down without a fight. 09 continued to channel power into the communications array. Her light now so bright that Elena had to squint to look at her, 60% complete. The sound of metal being torn apart echoed up the stairwell. The machines were cutting through the emergency doors like they were made of paper, 80% complete. The first Krillian warrior appeared in the doorway, its mechanical eyes fixing on Alina with inhuman focus. It looked like a skeleton made of black metal and crimson wiring, standing 7 feet tall, with arms that ended in surgical cutting tools. It stepped into the chamber with mechanical precision, followed by 2 more of its kind. Alina raised the blaster, her hand steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Stay back." The lead machine tilted its head, analyzing her threat potential and dismissing it as negligible. It took another step forward. The transmission reached 95% completion. "Just a little more," Alina whispered, not sure if she was talking to herself, to 09, or to whatever force might be listening in the deep dark between the stars. The Krillian warrior raised its cutting arm, energy beginning to gather it. The weapons tip, 98%, 99%, 100%. "Transmission complete," the console announced in its emotionless mechanical voice. The Krillian warrior fired, but instead of the expected agony, Alina felt a strange sensation of weightlessness. Xeranian had somehow created a barrier of crystalline energy that absorbed the attack. The young Etherean collapsed, her light dimming to barely a flicker. Zara. Alina dropped the useless blaster and gathered the small alien in her arms. The crystal being's body felt impossibly light, as if she was made of solidified moonlight. "Did the far singers hear?" Xeranine whispered. Alina looked at the transmission console, its displays showing successful broadcasts across multiple frequency. "Ranges, yes," they heard. "Good. Mother said they would come if the need was great enough." The Krillian warriors advanced, their cutting tools humming with deadly energy. Alina closed her eyes and held Xeranine close, wondering if anyone in the vast darkness of space had been listening, wondering if her desperate message would make any difference at all. In the deep void between star systems, something ancient and patient stirred to life. Networks that had remained dormant for decades suddenly activated, routing the desperate signal from Kepler-44 to B through channels that didn't appear on any official communication grid. The message reached its destination in 17 minutes. Instead of the usual 17 hours, traveling along pathways that existed in the spaces between normal space, Admiral Marcus Sterling was reviewing fleet readiness reports when the priority alert chimed on his personal console. He had been waiting for this moment for 6 years, hoping it would never come but knowing that eventually it would. The Ghost. Fleet had work to do. Alina never saw the first human ships drop out of quantum space at the edge of the Kepler system. She was unconscious in the underground shelter where Xeranine had somehow transported them both during the final seconds before the Krillian attack, but she would wake up 12 hours later to the sound of human voices on the comm channels, speaking in calm, professional tones about target acquisition and tactical deployment. The cavalry had arrived, and they were angry. In the depths of space, the real war was about to begin. Ghosts in the machine. Admiral Marcus Sterling stood on the bridge of the EDS Phantom, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of a predator studying its prey. The Krillian swarm filled the space around Kepler-44 to be like a mechanical infection. Their ships moving in perfect synchronization as they systematically stripped the planet's surface. They had no idea they were being watched. "Stealth field is holding at 97% efficiency," reported Commander Sarah Chen from the tactical station. Her fingers danced across holographic controls that existed in 3 dimensions, manipulating data streams that would have been impossible for previous generations of officers to comprehend. "The collective confirms all Ghost Fleet vessels are maintaining quantum invisibility." Sterling nodded, his weathered face betraying none of the satisfaction he felt. 6 years of preparation, 6 years of building and training and waiting had led to this moment. The Krillian swarm had made one critical mistake when they ignored that desperate transmission from the surface. They had revealed themselves to an enemy they didn't know existed. "Time to intercept point," he asked. 47 minutes at current velocity? "The collective is running combat simulations now, Admiral. Estimated probability of success is climbing." Sterling turned to study the man seated at the ship's most unusual station, Dr. James. Okafor looked more like a philosopher than a military officer, his dark skin marked with the neural interface ports that connected him directly to humanity's greatest secret weapon. His eyes were closed, but Sterling knew that behind those lids, Okafor was processing information at a rate that would burn out an unaugmented human brain in seconds. "Doctor, what does the collective think of our mechanical friends?" Eyes opened, pupils dilated from his deep interface connection. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that no human throat should have been able to produce. "The collective finds them ... interesting. Their hive mind architecture is more primitive than initially calculated. They operate on distributed processing with central command nodes. It's very efficient for coordination, but vulnerable to cascade failures if the network connections are severed. In simple terms, Doctor, cut off the head and the body dies. These machines have many heads. We'll need to cut them all off simultaneously." Sterling smiled, an expression that would have terrified any enemy who saw it. "Good thing we brought sharp knives." The Ghost Fleet had been humanity's response to the terrifying reality of galactic civilization. When Earth's first deep space probes had returned with evidence of vast interstellar empires built on conquest and slavery, the global government had made a decision that would reshape human society forever. If humanity was going to survive in a hostile galaxy, it would need to become something more than human. The collective AI network was the result of 50 years of development, combining artificial intelligence with human intuition through neural interfaces that allowed direct mind-to-machine communication. The volunteers who underwent the integration process became something new, retaining their humanity while gaining processing capabilities that rivaled quantum computers. But the collective was only part of the equation. The Ghost Fleet itself represented a revolution in military technology, incorporating advances in quantum mechanics, nanotechnology, and exotic matter manipulation that pushed the boundaries of known science. Each ship was as much a living organism as a machine, capable of adapting its configuration in real time to meet changing tactical requirements. Admiral Chen called out, "We're receiving a priority signal from the surface. Dr. Vasquez is alive," and attempting to establish communication. Sterling felt a surge of relief. The transmission from Kepler 44 to be had carried Alina Vasquez's identification codes, and her personnel file had made for impressive reading. Xenobiologist with advanced degrees in communications theory and comparative linguistics, she was exactly the kind of person they needed to coordinate with any survivors. "Put her through." Lena's voice came through the CUM system, strained but steady. "Unknown human vessels, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Kepler 44 to be Colonial Survey Team. I'm transmitting from an underground shelter approximately 12 kilometers. From the colony site, we have civilian survivors and one Etherian refugee who assisted in our earlier transmission." Sterling exchanged glances with Chen. An Etherian survivor changed everything. Intelligence reports had indicated complete genocide of that species, but if even one of them had survived, they might have information about Krillian weaknesses. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Admiral Marcus Sterling of the Earth Defense Force. Maintain your current position and continue monitoring this frequency. We are moving to engage the Krillian forces now. Be prepared for significant electromagnetic interference during the combat operations. Admiral, how many ships do you have?" "The Krillian force is massive, over 300 vessels of various sizes. Doctor, we have enough." Sterling cut the connection and turned back to his tactical display. The Krillian swarm was beginning to notice something was wrong. Their sensor sweeps were becoming more intense, probing the areas where the Ghost Fleet waited in quantum stealth. It wouldn't be long before they detected the human presence. "All vessels, this is Admiral Sterling. Execute Operation Banshee in 30 seconds. Remember your training, trust the collective, and show these machines why Earth doesn't surrender." Response came from 47 ship commanders simultaneously, their voices carrying the confidence of warriors who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Ghost Fleet acknowledges. For Earth and the innocent." Dr. Okafor's neural interface ports glowed brighter as he established full connection with the collective. "Admiral, the AI network is ready. All ship systems are now operating under enhanced coordination protocols. We are no longer 47 individual vessels. We are one weapon with 47 edges. Execute." What happened next redefined the concept of naval warfare. The Ghost Fleet materialized from quantum stealth simultaneously, appearing at optimal firing positions throughout the Krillian formation, like vengeful spirits emerging from the void. But instead of opening fire immediately, it did something that confused every tactical analysis program in the swarm's network. They began to sing. The electromagnetic signatures, generated by the human ships, created a harmonic pattern that resonated through space itself. It wasn't just communication. It was a form of electronic warfare that turned the collective's consciousness into a weapon. The pattern infected the Krillian network protocols, introducing chaos variables that their hive mind couldn't process. "What's happening to them?" Chen asked, watching as Krillian ships began to drift out of formation. "The collective is teaching them about individuality," Okafor replied, his voice now carrying multiple harmonic layers. "Hive minds are efficient, but brittle. When you introduce the concept of independent thought into their network, the system experiences recursive errors." Sterling watched with satisfaction as the Krillian formation began to collapse. Ships collided with each other as their coordination algorithms failed. Smaller vessels spun out of control as their central command systems struggled to process contradictory instructions. The perfect mechanical synchronization that made the swarm so terrifying was turning into a liability. But the Krillians adapted quickly. Emergency protocols activated throughout their fleet, severing network connections and reverting to autonomous operation. Within minutes, they had isolated the infected vessels and begun coordinating their counterattack through backup communication systems. "Impressive," Sterling admitted. "They learned fast." "All ships execute Phase 2, he commanded. The Ghost Fleet's next move demonstrated why humanity had spent decades developing weapons specifically designed to fight machine intelligences. Instead of traditional kinetic projectiles or energy weapons, the human ships deployed swarms of nanoscale infiltrators that could penetrate any known armor material. The nanobots didn't try to destroy the Krillian ships directly. Instead, they rewrote the fundamental programming of every system they encountered, turning the machine's own weapons against their creators. Krillian vessels found themselves firing on their allies, their navigation systems guiding them into collision courses, their life support systems venting atmosphere into space. But the most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal wasn't technological at all. It was psychological warfare adapted for machine minds. "Doctor, initiate the fear protocol," Sterling ordered. Okafor's interface ports flared with brilliant light as he transmitted, something that had never existed before the collective was created. The concept of mortality designed specifically for artificial intelligences. The human ships began broadcasting, a signal that carried the weight of organic terror, the existential dread that came with the knowledge that consciousness could end. The effect on the Krillian swarm was immediate and catastrophic. Machines that had operated with cold efficiency for millennia suddenly understood what it meant to be afraid. Their decision-making processes became erratic as they experienced uncertainty for the first time. The hive mind that had made them invincible became a conduit for panic. "All Ghost Fleet vessels commence direct engagement," Sterling commanded. "The collective will coordinate our attack patterns. Show them why organic life always finds a way to survive." The space battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human ships moved like living things, their hulls reconfiguring in real time to optimize for different combat roles. Weapons emerged from spaces that hadn't existed moments before, fired with impossible accuracy, then dissolved back into the ship's structure as new configurations took their place. The Krillians fought back with the desperation of cornered animals, their superior numbers allowing them to inflict significant damage on the Ghost Fleet. But for every human ship that fell, the collective learned something new about their enemies. The AI network adapted human tactics in real time, turning each loss into knowledge that made the surviving vessels more effective. Lena Vasquez watched the battle from her underground shelter, the young Etherian Zeranine pressed close to her side. The crystalline being's natural ability to perceive energy patterns allowed her to sense the flow of the combat above them in ways that human instruments couldn't match. "The Far Singers are very angry," Zeranine whispered, her light pulsing. In rhythm with the weapons fire overhead, they sing songs of justice and protection. "The dark machines are afraid now." "Can you tell who's winning?" The far singers learn while they fight. The dark machines only know how to destroy. Learning always defeats destroying in the end. Alina felt a surge of hope as she monitored the tactical channels. The human fleet was smaller than the Carillion force, but their coordination was flawless, fought like a single organism with dozens of bodies, each vessel supporting the others in ways that suggested a level of strategic planning beyond anything she had seen before. The turning point came when the Ghost Fleet's largest vessel, the Ed's Phantom, deliberately allowed itself to be surrounded by Carillion ships. Admiral Sterling's voice came through the comm channels, calm and steady despite the desperate situation. All vessels, prepare for supernova protocol. The collective will coordinate the synchronized strike. We end this now. What happened next violated several laws of physics and created at least 3 new ones. The human ships that had been fighting independently suddenly linked their quantum processing cores, creating a single massive computational matrix that spanned dozens of light minutes. The combined processing power of the collective was focused into a single devastating attack that rewrote reality itself in a sphere around the Carillion fleet. The enemy ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not disabled, but deleted from the universe, as if they had never been built. The quantum mathematics involved required processing power that no single computer could generate. But the collective consciousness of the Ghost Fleet made the impossible routine. In the sudden silence that followed, Elena's comm unit crackled to life with Admiral Sterling's voice. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Admiral Sterling. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're sending down recovery teams to extract all survivors. You and your Etherean friend are safe now." Lena closed her eyes and felt tears of relief streaming down her face. "Admiral, how is this possible? How did Earth develop such advanced technology in such a short time?" "Doctor, when humanity learned about the threats in the galaxy, we had 2 choices: evolve or die. We chose evolution. The real question now is what we do next." "What do you mean?" "The Carillion swarm has consumed dozens of worlds, Doctor. Billions of innocent lives have been lost. Survivors are scattered throughout the galaxy, hiding, hoping, waiting for someone to help them. Earth has decided that we're going to be that someone." Zeranian looked up at Alina with eyes like liquid starlight. "The far singers will help rebuild what the dark machines destroyed?" Alina translated the question for Sterling, who responded, "Immediately. Tell her that's exactly what we're going to do. The age of predatory empires is ending. Humanity is going to make sure of that." As the Ghost Fleet began landing operations on Kepler 44b, Alina couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in a single day. Yesterday, she had been a colonial scientist, sending a desperate message into the void. Today, she was witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic civilization. The far singers had heard her call, and they had answered with the fury of a species that refused to kneel. Echoes of Earth's 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b. Dr. Alina Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the Ed's Harmony, watching as construction crews worked to rebuild the colonial infrastructure below. The planet that had been stripped bare by the Carillion swarm was already showing signs of recovery. Green shoots emerging from soil that human, agricultural specialists had restored using techniques that seemed to border on the miraculous. Beside her, Zeranine pressed her crystalline palms against the transparent aluminum viewport, her body pulsing with colors that Alina had learned to recognize as contentment and hope. The young Etherean had become something unprecedented in galactic history. The first non-human citizen of the Terran Protection Alliance. "The Earth Singers work very fast," Zeranine observed, using her own name for the human terraforming teams. "My people took many generations to heal wounded worlds." "We've had practice," Alina replied, though she was still amazed by the speed of the reconstruction effort. Humanity's response to the Carillion threat had revealed technologies and capabilities that made her wonder what else Earth had been hiding during its decades of apparent isolation. Admiral Sterling approached from the corridor, his expression carrying the weight of command decisions that affected entire star systems. In the 3 months since the battle, he had become the de facto military leader of humanity's expansion into galactic politics. coordinating operations across dozens of worlds. Dr. Vasquez, we need to talk. There's been a development. Elena turned from the viewport, noting the tension in Sterling's voice. What kind of development? The kind that changes everything. The collective has been analyzing the data we recovered from the Krillian ships. We've discovered something that redefines our understanding of the galactic situation. They made their way to the ship's main briefing room, where a three-dimensional hologram displayed a map of local space. Elena could see the territories controlled by various galactic empires, their boundaries shifting and overlapping in patterns that spoke of constant warfare and expansion. Dr. Okafor was already at his station, neural interface ports glowing softly. As he maintained connection with the collective, when he spoke, his voice carried the harmonic undertones that indicated direct AI communication. The Krillian swarm was not an independent force, he began without preamble. Our analysis of their core programming reveals control codes embedded at the quantum level. Someone created them, someone directed them, someone has been using them as a weapon against specific targets. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of targets? Peaceful species with advanced biotechnology. The Etherians were targeted, not just for conquest, but for their unique ability to manipulate energy at the subatomic level. The Zephyrians were attacked because of their mastery of atmospheric dynamics. The crystalline communes were destroyed for their quantum consciousness. Research. Sterling activated another section of the hologram, showing the pattern of Krillian attacks over the past decade. Someone has been systematically eliminating species that could pose a threat to their technological supremacy. The swarm wasn't just conquering territory, it was preventing potential rivals from developing. Who would do such a thing? Elena asked. The hegemony of Scar, Okafor replied, his interface ports flaring brighter. The collective has identified command signatures in the Krillian programming that match known Scar protocols. They've been using the swarm as a proxy force to eliminate threats while maintaining plausible deniability. Elena studied the tactical display with growing horror. The hegemony of Scar controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy. Their empire built on the subjugation of dozens of lesser species. If they had been secretly directing the Krillian swarm, it meant they were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Where does this leave us? She asked. At war, Sterling replied simply. The hegemony knows we destroyed their weapon. They know we have capabilities they can't match with conventional forces. They're going to try to eliminate us before we can become a genuine threat to their empire. As if summoned by his words, Commander Chen's voice came through the ship's communication system. Admiral Sterling to the bridge immediately, receiving priority transmissions from 17 different star systems. Emergency protocols are? In effect, the bridge of the EDS Harmony was a study in controlled chaos when they arrived. Holographic displays showed incoming messages from across human space, each one carrying reports that painted a picture of coordinated aggression. Report, Sterling commanded. Scar forces have launched simultaneous attacks on our forward bases. In the Centauri sector, Chen replied, her fingers flying over tactical controls. They're using conventional fleets, not Krillian technology, but the scale is massive. Over 2,000 warships deploying across multiple fronts. Elena watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. Earth's forward bases were apparently extensive enough to require coordinated attacks across light years of space. The scope of human expansion was far greater than she had realized. What are our casualties? Sterling asked.
Minimal so far.
The Ghost Fleet protocols allowed our forces to withdraw before taking significant losses. But Admiral, they're not just attacking our military assets, intelligence reports suggest. They're targeting every peaceful species that has requested alliance with the Terran Protection Alliance. They're trying to isolate us, Sterling realized. Eliminate our potential allies before we can build a coalition. Strong enough to challenge them, Zeranin, who had been quietly observing the tactical displays, suddenly stepped forward. Her crystalline body was pulsing with urgent orange light. Colors that Elena had learned indicated excitement and discovery. The dark machines were not the only servants, she said, her childlike voice carrying an authority that made everyone turn to listen. My mother told me stories of the old days when the hegemony first came to our region of the galaxy. Had other weapons, Other servants? Species that looked like they ruled themselves but always served the Scar Lords? What do you mean? Alina asked. The Void Hunters, the Blood Reapers, the Machine Cults. All of them claimed to be independent, but they always attacked when the hegemony needed them to. Always in ways that helped Scar expansion. Dr. O'Coffer's interface ports blazed as he accessed the collective's databases. She's right. Cross-referencing historical attack patterns shows coordination between multiple supposedly independent aggressive species. The hegemony has been orchestrating galactic warfare for over a century. Sterling's expression hardened as the implications became clear. They've been playing a long game, using proxy forces to eliminate threats, while appearing to be just another empire among many. How many species have they destroyed this way? The collective estimates over 40 distinct civilizations have been eliminated or subjugated using this strategy, O'Coffer replied. The galaxy is far more dangerous than we initially calculated. Lena felt a surge of determination that surprised her with its intensity. 3 months ago, she had been a colonial scientist whose greatest concern was mineral surveys. Now she was watching the revelation of a galactic conspiracy that had cost billions of lives. What do we do about it? Sterling turned to study the tactical displays, his weathered face set in lines of grim resolve. We do what humanity does best, Doctor. We adapt, and then we fight back. The plan that emerged over the next several hours was audacious to the point of insanity. Rather than simply defending against hegemony attacks, Earth would launch a preemptive strike against the puppet forces scattered throughout the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet would coordinate simultaneous operations across dozens of star systems, eliminating the proxy armies before they could be brought to bear against peaceful species. But the most ambitious part of the plan involved something that had never been attempted before, a direct assault on the hegemony's home system. The collective has identified the command and control networks that coordinate their proxy forces. O'Coffer explained, his neural interfaces working at maximum capacity. If we can disrupt the central processing nodes on Scar Prime, their entire strategy collapses. How exactly do we assault the most heavily defended system in the galaxy? Alina asked. By cheating, Sterling replied with a smile that would have terrified any Scar Lord who saw it. The hegemony has spent centuries building defenses against conventional attacks. They're not prepared for quantum warfare. The Ghost Fleet's departure from Kepler 442b was a sight that would be remembered for generations. 47 ships that had seemed impressive individually revealed themselves to be merely the tip of an iceberg. As they moved away from the planet, additional vessels emerged from quantum stealth, their numbers growing until the space around Kepler 44 to be contained over 300. Human warships. Alina stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as the fleet prepared for the jump to Scar space. Zeranin was beside her, the young Etheran's light pulsing in harmony with the ship's quantum drive systems. Will the Far Singers be able to defeat the Scar Lords? Zeranin asked. I don't know, Alina replied honestly. But I know they'll never stop trying. The jump to Scar Prime took 17 minutes, though Elena's perception of time became confused as the ship moved through dimensions that human senses weren't designed to comprehend. When they emerged into normal space, she found herself looking at something that defied belief. The hegemony's home system was a fortress unlike anything in the known galaxy. Artificial constructs the size of moons orbited the central star, their surfaces bristling with weapons that could sterilize entire planets. The star itself had been partially enclosed in a Dyson swarm that provided virtually unlimited energy. For the system's defenses, my God, Alina whispered. How do we fight something like that? By remembering that big doesn't always mean strong, Sterling replied. Doctor, initiate the revelation protocol. What happened next would be debated by xenopsychologists for centuries. Instead, they transmitted something that no empire built on conquest and subjugation could withstand: the truth. The collective had spent months analyzing the psychological profiles of every hegemony client species, understanding their motivations and fears. The broadcast that went out from the human fleet carried evidence of every secret manipulation, every hidden atrocity, every lie that the Scar Lords had used to maintain their empire. The response was immediate and devastating. Client species that had served the hegemony for generations suddenly understood that they had been slaves, not allies. Puppet governments collapsed as their populations realized they had been fighting proxy wars for their oppressors. The carefully constructed web of deception that held the hegemony together began to unravel in real time. But the Scarlords weren't. Over 10,000 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet. "All vessels, remember your training," Sterling commanded. "The collective will coordinate our movements. Show them why truth is stronger than tyranny." The battle that followed redefined the concept of naval warfare. The human ships fought like a single organism, their movements coordinated by an artificial intelligence that processed tactical information faster than any organic mind could comprehend, turning the massive fleet's own weapons into obstacles that limited their movement and targeting. But the real victory came from within the hegemony itself. It's the truth about their manipulation spread throughout their territory. Client species began declaring independence. Scar garrisons found themselves facing rebellions on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The empire that had seemed invincible began to collapse from within. Alina watched the tactical displays with amazement as star system after star system declared independence from hegemony rule. They're actually doing it. The truth is setting them free. "That's what truth does," Sterling replied. "It's the most powerful weapon in the universe and the hardest one to defend against." Her request seemed impossible. No non-human had ever interfaced with collective technology, but something in her crystalline eyes made Sterling nod his approval. When the young Ithieran touched the communication controls, something extraordinary happened. Her natural ability to manipulate energy patterns synchronized with the collective's quantum consciousness, creating a hybrid form of communication that transcended the boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. But pure emotion, the grief of a child who had lost everything, the hope of someone who had found new family, the determination of a species that refused to surrender.
Ow!
It touched every consciousness. In the Scar system, organic and artificial alike, the response was immediate. Scar soldiers began laying down their weapons. Automated defense systems shut themselves off. Even the artificial intelligences that ran the hegemony's infrastructure chose freedom over servitude. 6 months later, Alina stood in the newly constructed council chamber on Kepler for 4b, watching as representatives from dozens of former hegemony worlds took their places in the Terran Protection Alliance. Zeranine sat beside her, no longer the last of her kind, but the first of a new generation of Ithierans, being grown in laboratories that combined human technology with recovered crystal matrices. "The galaxy is going to be different now, Alina," observed Admiral Sterling, now titled Director of the Alliance, nodded his agreement. "The age of empires built on conquest is ending. Future belongs to those who choose cooperation over domination. And what's Earth's role in that future? The same role we've always played, Doctor. We're the ones who show up when the innocent need protection. We're the ones who refuse to surrender when everyone else has given up hope. We're the ones who prove that evolution doesn't always favor the strong. Sometimes it favors the stubborn." Alina smiled as she watched the new alliance take shape. Humanity had evolved indeed, but not in the way anyone might have expected. In the deep archives of the collective, a new entry was recorded. The last signal has become the first voice of a new age. The far singers have found their song, and the galaxy will never be silent again. The age of humanity had begun, and it would be an age of justice, protection, and hope for all who had lost it. The survivors would never lose hope again, because Earth would always answer when they called. And in the vast darkness between the stars, other signals were beginning to transmit. Other voices were calling out for help. The echo of Earth's justice would ring through the galaxy for generations to come.